Hey everybody, how are you today? I've got a great little project for you. This is a freebie. The pattern is for Seize the Day. It's a great little beach sign. Some really simple, very short supply list, some simple colors, and a whole lot of brush painting. So this is brush lettering, which is something you see a lot in the stuff that I design, but I really enjoy doing it. And it lends a lot to an individual piece too when you're using lettering. So this is the piece today. It's the Seize the Day. It's like a bathroom sign, something you could hang up in the beach house or beside the pool or at the cottage, or in my case, I have a very nautical themed master bath, so that may end up there. So this one is really simple. It's just straight lettering on a simple faux finished background and a little stencil detail. It's really simple, but I wanted to walk you through my technique for doing this type of lettering, for most lettering, just to show you that there are a few tricks to help it make your lettering look spectacular. Biggest pitfall for people: you can paint the most beautiful piece and then completely ruin it by having irregular lettering, where the lettering is not consistent, or it isn't straight, or it isn't level. And a lot of that, people are really intimidated by doing lettering, and I have a few little tips to show you that are going to make that a whole lot simpler and give you more success when you finish your lettering. So you don't need a lot of supplies. In this particular case, we are using my world famous #2 faux squirrel rigger. This is a fabulous brush for this type of thing. They do come in a variety of sizes. I usually use the #2 or #4. Those seem to be the ideal for most lettering on small projects like this sign, or on some of the decorative painted pieces that I do in my patterns, etc. So a #2 or a #4 faux squirrel rigger from Dynasty Brush. You're going to need, for the background, some Decor Vintage Effects. I love this stuff. This color wash paint is fantastic, and this one I'm using is called Patina. It's this very soft, distressed looking green. It's very pretty. The surface is an arched panel. It's from Cupboard Distributing. I'm going to pop their website up there for you. Cupboard Distributing is cdwood.com. It's a great surface. It's very affordable. It's not horribly expensive. That's your Vintage Effects, a #2 or a #4 rigger, and of course some Americana Warm White and Americana Asphaltum. Seems simple, right? This is it. This is all you really need to do this piece. So, background, really simple. You just brush on some of this Vintage Effects, let it sit for a moment, and then take a damp cloth and wipe the excess off. Gives you sort of a distressed, stained finish. It's very nice. You're going to let that dry, give it a good 15 to 20 minutes to dry well, or you can force it. I use the heat gun, or you can use a hair dryer to force it dry. Give the surface a light sanding. I like using these sanding sponges, but just give it a light sanding, just to remove any furring that or green that has stood up. And then you're ready to get started. So in this free pattern right here, it's available on my website. You'll find it under freebies. That's where it is. You'll find this pattern. The sizes, everything is done to actual size. So you don't have to blow anything up. There are full write-ups plus a complete supply list. And you'll have all of the everything that I'm going to cover is in this as well. Plus, there is a full color step-by-step in it, so that you'll be able to follow right along as I'm doing here. So, tip #1. I make sure that my lettering is, the line drawing is adhered to the surface, top and bottom. And then I slip the graphite underneath it for tracing. Make sure your lettering is level, and you can simply do that by using a ruler and then checking the measurements to make sure that everything is straight and level. There's nothing worse than finishing a piece and realizing that your lettering is going uphill. So you want everything straight and level. Then get your white graphite. I like using white on this type of thing. It's a little harder to see, but it's a lot easier to get rid of the white or have it disappear into the background than black or gray. So white graphite paper in behind this. Notice I work straight from the copy paper. I don't trace my line drawings. I work straight from my copy paper. There's a reason for that. Tracing it onto tracing paper and then tracing it onto your surface, the image itself degrades. No matter how good you are at tracing, the image degrades. So it's better to work directly from the image that I provided in the pattern. The other thing you're going to need is a good corked back steel ruler. I say cork back because it keeps the ruler off the surface slightly. So the edge of it is off the surface. If you're working with paint pens or something like that, then it's less likely that the paint will bleed underneath it. So that's why I use that. And then for those of you that have always wondered why I use this Signo DX, this 3.8 or 0.38 Uniball Signo, the reason for it is right here. This has an extremely fine point, and it is a steel ball, not a ceramic ball. So this thing is fantastic. The reason I go with such a fine one is that when you're tracing this lettering and you have a stylus, the line that it leaves behind is quite wide. If you're using a ballpoint pen, the line you're leaving behind is quite wide. If you're using one of these Uniball Signos with this very, very fine point, you get nice, thin, crisp, clean lines. And that's important when you're doing lettering. So, 6-inch ruler, ultra fine point pen. What you do is all of the vertical and horizontal lines get done with this. Use the ruler to mark those vertical and horizontal lines. Bottoms of the lettering, the top of the lettering, all of the crossbars in between. Use that ruler to make sure that those lines are very straight. Then you can come back in with that same pen and you can trace those curves so that they line up with those vertical and horizontal lines. So what you're doing is connect them. What that does is that you are not going to be able to do that curve with a ruler or a tool because this angle changes far too much. So you can eyeball this, and it's a short distance, so it's very easy to get that curve right. As most important, vertical and horizontal lines, all of those have to be crisp, have to be clean, and have to be straight. We are conditioned from the day we pick up our first book to read everything from top to bottom, left to right. So when something is not vertically straight or horizontally level, the eye picks it up. We're conditioned to that. So you want to have that crisp and clean. Steel ruler, ultra fine, hard point pen. This is a must in my kit. So you have to have those two things. So that when you trace that lettering on, this is what you get. Nice, straight, vertical lines, clean, horizontal lines, and level. These are vitally important to get really good lettering. You cannot paint crisp, clean, straight lettering if your lines aren't crisp, clean, and straight. So there it is. We've traced our lettering on. We've got our background in. So now comes the fun part. You get to paint your lettering. So I'm using an angled shader. In this case, it's a black gold. You use your favorite. Or flat shader if that's what you prefer using. And you float a nice float of thinned, heavily thinned asphaltum to the right side of each letter. This is your shadow, or the shadow, small shadow, that each of these letters are going to cast. I do this beforehand because if you goof, and go over the line, which I will do intentionally at times, because as you put that float in, if you go over that line like so, when you paint it, it's going to give you a nice crisp clean. Crisp and clean, crisp and clean. Everything has to be crisp and clean. Crisp and clean. It'll give you a nice finished edge on the letter. So that's where this number 2 rigger comes in. Now I'm using warm white. Now let's discuss this rigger, because this is important. Let me grab I want you to be able to see why this rigger works the way it does. So a rigger brush looks like a liner, but it really isn't. A liner comes to a very fine point, like a round brush. In fact, the hairs are arranged inside the brush to form that, fat little belly and the sharp, sharp point. A rigger is built more like a flat. The hairs are arranged in the ferrule to produce a flat line. So when I press down on this brush, I get a square edge. If I do that with a round brush or with a liner, I get a curved edge. Let me find, here we go. So if I take a round or a liner, I'm going to use a round just to exaggerate this so that you can see. If I press down, you can see one is round, one is flat. The rigger, this number 2, look how skinny that is, but look, I can press that brush down and open it up. I can fill up to 1/4 of an inch wide with a number 2. A number 4 will give you a little more width. You can open them up. The larger the rigger brush, the wider of the space you're going to be able to fill in. And that makes a big difference when you're painting lettering. The other thing, notice when I press down on this and I push, I get a nice straight line. It fills in that space very nicely. Now here's the other thing. Because this brush has a square edge, when I press down on it, it comes to a chisel edge just like a round. Let's zoom in here a little bit. Do you see? It's got a nice square edge just like that, which makes it ideal for doing this. So I can do very sharp, crisp, pat it down. Just like using a calligraphy nib. So that's very important for doing all of those little curves in the lettering. So if I go to the edge, and then I can curve. So that's why I use the rigger, because this brush is absolutely ideal for doing this type of lettering. Well, for a lot of different letterings. With a little practice, you can do some really elaborate script work. So here we go. Here's the Seize the Day. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see what I'm doing, and we'll get rid of that website thing. So I've loaded my brush. You can see it's got that little flat chisel. This is where this gets very handy. I can run that chisel down into those points, use that chisel to fill in those curves. Just keep your paint in a nice consistency. It's sort of like a little thicker than ink. And then when you're painting these vertical pieces, and I see people do this all the time, they do this. Well, the more often you do that, then you're to never come back to the same spot, so you end up with that ragged edge. So what you do is you bring your brush up to the line and then press down till the brush opens up and releases paint, and just paint straight along that line. Remember what I said about that chisel edge? So look, nice straight vertical line. And you do the same thing on the other side. So work up to the line, press down till the brush opens up, and it starts releasing paint. Easy peasy. And remember, it's a chisel. Nice straight edge. Look at that. Most important part of doing lettering is being patient. Taking your time. You work so hard on your painted pieces, and we always seem to fall down on the lettering a little bit. Take the time, load your brush, look at that. Nice clean lettering. If you find that your paint is not opaque enough, there's nothing wrong with coming back in and putting another coat. But the thing is, do it exactly the same way. Don't try to patchwork it. Look at that. There it is. Very clean, very easy. Now this particular piece, the reason I went with this sort of beachy theme for this type of thing is quite simple. If the lettering is irregular, if it's not opaque enough, because the nature of this piece is to have a distressed appearance anyway, it really doesn't matter if you get the lettering, the paint coverage absolutely perfect. But those vertical and horizontal lines, those straight edges, those are important. It gives a piece a professional finish. It gives a piece a really nice finished look. And I prefer hand lettering to stenciling lettering. Even if I'm using a stencil for lettering, I tend to go back in and fill in those bridges. The bridges are those little spaces between the portions of the letter. I will paint those in because I don't like that stilted appearance. I like things to have that more of a professional finish. Take your time with the lettering. Take your time practicing with this brush. You won't be sorry. In the end, your finished pieces, your lettered pieces are going to look that much better. And practice with that brush. You get used to working with it, applying the pressure, letting the paint release, lifting off and releasing the brush back out. Your lettering is going to be so much better with a little bit of practice. It's this easy. And this rigor makes a world of difference. And most of the students that have used this number 2 rigor to do their lettering, they will tell you that it does make a world of difference. Okay, guys, that's it for today. Go to the website, TRACYMOREAU.net. In the freebies section, you will see a Seize the Day project. Has a complete supply list, and the pattern is free. You can just download it and print it off for your use. And if you have any questions, you know where to find me. I am on Facebook at tracy.morrow. Or you can find me on Instagram, tracy.morrow, or you can find me right here at TRACYMOREAU.net. Please feel free to ask me any questions you may have. I'm more than happy to help. All right, I got a couple more things to tell you. If you are looking for any of the Decor Art products that I've used for this particular project, MaureenBaker.com. She is both a Decor Art and a Dynasty brush distributor, and she will have everything that you need there. She is still shipping even in this COVID-19 crisis. She is still shipping, and she will be more than happy to get you the supplies that you need. Let's see, who else do I need to? Oh, of course, Decor Art Media. There, I use the Decor Art Media paints and the Decor Art Americanas and the Vintage Effects. If you have any questions about any of their product line, you can visit them at decorart.com. For the surface, again, cdwood.com. They are also still shipping. They are a Decor Art retailer, distributor, and manufacturer. So they manufacture a lot of their own wood surfaces, and they have some great stencils. So check them out. You can get a lot of supplies from them as well. And as always, all new patterns and whatnot going up on this site. We'll have new video up on this site. So don't forget to visit me at tracymoreau.com. Thank you for joining me. Have a great day.